Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Reapportionment and Redistricting Committee. We are having a hearing on two bills this afternoon, joint with the House Committee chaired by Ann Healy. We'll start off first with the Senate Bill SJ0002, and I'm hoping President Ferguson is here. Don't see him on the list here yet. Ross?
Madam Chair, I think actually we were going to start with the governor's plan that he submitted.
Okay, that's fine. We'll start with SJ003, and the bill sponsor is going to testify. Who might that be? Someone testifying for the governor?
Yes, we have members from the Maryland Citizens Redistricting Commission, and support staff should be letting them in. We have Walter Olson, Kathleen Heatherton, Nate Persily, and Alexander Williams.
Okay.
Is the chairman of that commission starting at all?
Yes.
So Judge Alexander Williams.
Yes, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
And you can start.
Okay, my co-chairs, are they on? They had the first part of the presentation. Are they on yet, Walter Olson and Dr. Heatherton?
Judge Williams, I'm here, so I'll be following you. And there's Walter. Okay.
Okay. Right. Which one of you wants to go first?
All right, Walter Olson. Thank you.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Olson.
Thank you, Judge Williams. Thank you to the Joint Committee. We are pleased to offer the legislative maps that have been put into these two joint resolutions, and we respectfully request a favorable committee report on them. We are very proud of our work and the maps that they produced. We took seriously our assignment to draw maps that were free from political influence or favor to any party or candidate. The districts we drew, we believe, are compact, offer minimal splits of counties and municipalities, are straightforward and understandable. We are pleased also that we achieved a smaller population variance than earlier Maryland maps. As you know, plus or minus 5% of population has been allowed in maps of the past, leading to a lot of complaints. And we achieved maps in which each Senate district is within plus or minus 2% rather than 5% of strict equality of population, and each House district is within plus or minus 3%. Very significant advance over previous maps. We were guided in our legal compliance by Professor Nate Persily of Stanford, who also was our expert in general. We believe that our maps are in compliance with both the National Voting Rights Act and with all other constitutional and state legal requirements. We are proud that our Senate map, like our congressional map, got an A in partisan fairness from the Princeton Gerrymandering Project. Just a word on that, because you may be wondering why only the Senate but not the House was rated. Princeton says that because of Maryland's unique system of multi-member districting with some 3, some 2, and some 1, they are not going to be rating the House of Delegates maps. They do, however, rate the state Senate maps, and as I say, we are proud to have gotten an A on partisan fairness in that. 1 year ago, Governor Hogan issued the executive order creating our commission to consist of 3 co-chairs and 6 commissioners. The 3 co-chairs selected the 6 additional members 2 from each party from more than 400 citizen applications. We sought independence and impartiality, representation of places across the state and many different walks of life and points of view. As an equal mix of Democrats, Republicans, and independents, we did not always see eye to eye. Where we disagreed, however, we reached sensible compromises. And I'm proud on behalf of all of us that our resulting votes on both the Senate map and the delegate map were 9-0. We all agreed on them. We accomplished a transparent process which allowed Marylanders to view us at work, see our ideas as they went along, and why we were making our choices, one choice rather than another. Our website helped in that and invited the public in. We posted draft maps many times throughout the process, and we're very much influenced by the public's reactions to these maps and comments on them, as well as by earlier public testimony. And to expand some on our public involvement and transparency, I would like to turn the microphone over to my 2 chairs. Judge Williams, are you next, or Kate, are you next?
Yes, thank you, Walter. I want to thank the joint delegation for allowing us in. The public engaged in a process which was very, very open. The commission's public meetings began on May 5 of 21 and included numerous working sessions among members to learn about the process and discuss the data and draft maps. Most of the meetings included testimony from the public. And we, of course, had working sessions. 3 rounds of public meetings were held to receive input from the public as to the redistricting process. Due to the issues of COVID, these meetings were held virtually through Zoom. This also allowed us to provide for simultaneous transcription as well as simultaneous Spanish translations on the accompanying YouTube broadcast of the meeting. The commission heard more than 230 separate testimony accounts from members of the public. And there were 3 rounds, as I said. Round 1 occurred between June 9 and July 28. We had 8 regional meetings during which members of the public could share their thoughts and concerns regarding the redistricting in advance of the release of the 2020 census data. We had 163 separate testimonies from members of the public and elected officials in round 1, and the meetings were streamed live on Zoom and YouTube with a viewership of more than 2,100 people. Round 2 was held between September 9 and September 20th. This included 4 statewide virtual meetings during which Marylanders were able to submit their own suggested maps through a portal on the website and present them to the commission with live testimony. Written testimony was also accepted. The commission heard in this round 2, 21 separate testimonies, and more than 1,000 people viewed the meeting on either Zoom or YouTube. Round 2 received 70 citizen map submissions. Each citizen submission was posted on the public website and reviewed by the commission. The commission held 6 public working sessions during September to draft maps for public review and comment. This was done along with the commission's Voting Rights Act and the American election law expert Professor Nathaniel Priscilli of the Stanford University Law School. Finally, round 3 was held each Wednesday evening in October between October 6th and the 27th. It included 4 public meetings at which Marylanders presented testimony regarding maps. They also submitted their own maps. The commission heard 46 separate testimonies during this final round, and the total viewership was just about 1,000. So in total, the Citizens Commission received 86 public map submissions through the portal and through email. The commissioners also held public working sessions at the completion of public testimony in order to suggest and address modifications to maps, including discussions regarding the Voting Rights Act, communities of interest, and other matters important to the criteria for drafting district boundaries. The Citizen Commission was responsive to public reaction, and we modified maps across the state in response to what concerns and requests we got from the public. Again, the Citizen Commission members voted upon the final map, the final proposed draft maps. Each map was posted to the website. and the website included a map viewer to allow residents to enter an address and determine in which district it was located. I will end by saying the commission worked diligently and hard to make sure that Marylanders had a say in the redistricting map. To accomplish this, we had a vigorous outreach program, which Dr. Kate Hetherington will now share with you. Dr. Hetherington?
Thank you,
wait,
Judge.
before you start, Dr. Hetherington, Edward Johnson was signed up here before you to speak. Is he here? Edward Johnson? Okay, go ahead, Dr. Hetherington.
Thank you, Senator King, and thank you, Judge Williams, and good afternoon to the members of the committee. I am pleased to provide you with a summary of the Citizens Commission outreach efforts and public engagement. The commission had more than 4,100 attendees at the virtual public meetings, including various citizens, as well as organizational leaders and elected officials. The commission was supported by the Maryland Department of Planning, which facilitated social media, updating the commission's website, and the distribution of meeting alerts and press releases. Social media posts resulted in more than 100,000 impressions on Twitter and a reach of almost 93,000 on Facebook. For each meeting, notifications were sent out via press release to more than 46,000 contacts, including the media, local, county, and state elected officials, and other organizations and individuals, such as the Maryland Association of Counties and the Maryland Municipal League. Promotional materials were translated into Spanish and distributed to the Latino community by the Commission's Hispanic advisor, Gloria Aparicio Blackwell, founder and director of the University of Maryland Office of Community Engagement. Public virtual meetings at which testimony was offered provided live Spanish translation done in partnership with the University of Maryland Spanish Department. Closed captioning for the hearing impaired was also provided. As a commission of volunteers, we work closely as a group with a common goal. Even though we disagreed on various matters, we were able to talk things through for the best outcome for all of Maryland. These outcomes resulted in the final maps presented to you from the Maryland Citizens Redistricting Commission, and of which we are extremely proud. Common themes were expressed by each of our members at the close of our work. They were a sense of pride in the dedication and commitment of the commissioners, a sense of overcoming challenges in the spirit of compromise to achieve fair results, pride in our responsiveness to the communities that voiced their concerns to the commission. At the completion of our last meeting, Professor Nate Persily, with whom our commission worked diligently to ensure our maps would be in compliance with the Voters' Rights Act, told our commission that our work should be held as a model for the way things should be done across the nation. He is a nationally renowned as an expert in redistricting law and American democratic process and advises state and local jurisdictions across the country. This accolade from Professor Persily is meaningful and solidifies the notion that this process can be completed successfully with input from the public and a transparent process. We are proud of the work we accomplished and thank you for this opportunity to share our official redistricting maps for your consideration. For the foregoing reasons, we respectfully request a favorable committee report of Senate Joint Resolution 3 and House Joint Resolution 1. Detailed map books were distributed to all committee members in December, and we are happy to answer any questions you have following Professor Persily's presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Nathaniel Persily, I guess, is next.
Yes,
okay.
Thank you very much, Senator. And thank you to the members of the committee. I did send along a PowerPoint presentation, which I'm happy to either use or not use, depending on whether logistically it's possible for you all. But
okay, I've not seen it.
The technical folks, I think we're going to put it up if they have. If not.
Yes, I have it. Just give me one moment.
I'll start, as you're working on that, I'll just reiterate what Dr. Hetherington said, and thank you to the co-chairs for their accolades. This was a remarkably sort of consensus building process in which Republicans, Democrats, and independents came together in order to pass or to develop a redistricting plan based on feedback from the public. You can go to the next slide. And so here are the maps that we put forward, and you have them as well as detailed maps for each district. What I thought I would do is just give the 100-foot up view of what we did in these with respect to compliance with the law and with the criteria. So next slide, please. And then you know that the requirements for this commission were different than ones that apply to the legislative process. Similar requirements with respect to the law, complying with the Voting Rights Act and one person, one vote, as well as applicable judicial directions. I was appointed now almost, I guess, 20 years ago to do the Maryland state legislative lines, along with Carl Arrow, who's the advisor to the Legislative Redistricting Commission. And so there are, of course, requirements with respect to crossing county lines that we had to obey. But even beyond that, the executive order makes clear that the plan should respect natural boundaries and geographic integrity and continuity of any municipal, corporation, county, et cetera. And that they should be compact, including nearby areas of population. And that for legislative districts, again, emphasizing equal population and to try to break up the multi-member districts into as many single-member districts as possible. Next slide. And so with respect to one person, one vote, as the three co-chairs mentioned, we are the Senate and House plans from the Redistricting Commission abide by a very low level of population equality, very low level of variance from population equality, so that you can see the maximum deviation overall is 1.92% in the Senate plan, and then with the House plan, it's under 3%. So these are restrictions that are 1 or 2 percentage points more narrow than the legislative, the LRAC plan that you're considering. Next slide. With respect to race and representation, compliance with the Voting Rights Act, but also just representation of the diversity of the Maryland population, you can see that, with respect to, say, majority Black and Latino districts, that the commission was quite successful, where 30% of the state Senate districts, 14 of them are majority Black voting age population, whereas in the LRAC plan, it's only 9. And in the Senate, when you look at the seats, again, you have to multiply it out because the multi-member districts, 43 of the state legislative seats would be majority Black, which is about 30.5%, which is about 7 more than in the legislative plan. We were also able to draw, and really without using race as a predominant factor, to draw 4 majority Latino seats in comparison to the one that is drawn in the LRAC plan. Those are in to the Montgomery County, Prince George's County area. Next slide. This is, of course, difficult to read, but I wanted to just emphasize something that is obvious when you look at the plan, and I'll have pictures in the next slide. But that if you look at you go back, sorry, go back to the table just for a second. If you look at any of the ways that we as redistricting experts measure compactness, all these different mathematical values, you'll see that the Senate and House plans that the commission has issued are more compact than the ones in the LRAC plan, and as well as compared to the existing districts. Next slide. And that comports with the pictures themselves. So at the top, you've got the commission plans, and at the bottom, the LRAC plans. And so you can see, for example, if you look over in the Howard County districts on the left, you see that on the bottom, the strangely shaped, purple district. Whereas if you look at the districts that we have here, one thing I should emphasize as we look at Howard County, because I mentioned Black and Latino districts, the commission also in places like Ellicott City, Northern Potomac, heard about cohesive Asian populations, even if they were unable to form a majority in a single member district. We made sure not to split them up. And you can see in Baltimore City and Baltimore County, the top districts are the commissions, the ones in the bottom. If you see like sort of the strange districts in Western Baltimore County, going up and down. You see them there, as well as in like Prince George's County. If you look over on the right side, the districts that are going many miles unnecessarily. Next slide, please. With respect to split counties, since we obey a very low level of population equality, it's quite heroic to achieve basically comparable numbers of split counties to the LRAC plan. And so they're about within each other. We do a little better on the House. They do one better on the Senate. And as I mentioned before, part of the criteria that the governor issued was to reduce the number of multi-member districts. So the commission plan is 87 single-member districts, 18 triple-member districts, whereas the LRAC plan is 30 single, 12 double, and 19 triple-member districts. And again, I will emphasize that we were able still to achieve the level of majority-minority districts, despite the fact that most of our districts are single-member districts. Next slide. Let me just briefly talk about the plan, and I'm happy to answer any questions. But you can see that the general outlines of the plan are to draw districts on the basis of political subdivision lines. The governor's order ordered us to number the districts starting up in northwestern Maryland. And you can see, for example, that all the districts, as you go through from Garrett County to Frederick County, are self-contained to the extent possible and only traversing county lines as necessary. Next slide. Montgomery County, there's a lot to say about these districts. The additional majority Latino district that we created in 13A, as well as I mentioned, trying to keep the Asian population in North Potomac together, but also all kinds of community of interest testimony that we received was then incorporated into this map of Montgomery County. Next slide. In Howard County, I mentioned Ellicott City before, but you can see that the commission plan basically is you've got a Columbia-based district, you've got a Northwestern Howard County district, one, by the way, that is as a Senate district shares with Southern Carroll County, but you don't need to cross those lines in order to get to fit one more House district in there. Next slide. And here is a somewhat stretched back and forth Baltimore County district. We received, there was a lot of iterations that we went through with Baltimore County, Baltimore City districts. The original draft of this plan had Dundalk and areas in southeastern Baltimore County in with the city. We got hundreds of comments on that. And simultaneously, we had comments about the importance, particularly for the Jewish community, of having a crossover district in northwestern Baltimore that went into Pikesville. And so we spent a lot of time redrawing the map to make sure that that southeastern part of Baltimore County was sort of taken out of the city and the area right northwest of Baltimore City was placed back in. Next slide. And in Anne Arundel County, a lot of this is determined, and this is a good example. If you look at Annapolis, trying to keep districts right around municipalities in order to ensure that they were not split in the plan. But you can see that that there are only two. That there are three intrusions into Anne Arundel County: one from southern Baltimore County, one from a small one from Calvert County, and one from Prince George's in the northwest. Next slide. Prince George's County. These are almost all majority-minority districts, with the exception, I believe, of 33B. Both the LRAC plan and the commission plan 33A is a substantial Latino ability to elect district, voting age population around 64%. And then the commission plan in adjoining districts to that in 33C, 34A also was able to create some more narrowly majority, what we call HVAP, Hispanic voting age population districts. But otherwise tries to respect, for example, the town of Bowie and its lines, as well as the many different municipalities that border Washington, D.C. Next slide. In Southern Maryland, we also made some substantial changes in order to deal with concerns about crossing the border from Calvert into St. Mary's County. So you'll notice that the border between St. Mary's and Calvert is respected, that there's no districts that cross over. That is what causes that additional split in Southern Prince George's County. So one of the districts goes into Charles, but we heard lots of testimony about the importance, for example, in what we've numbered 41C, of creating a St. Mary's-based, two St. Mary's-based legislative districts and to not cross that border. Next slide. And so on the Eastern Shore, obviously there's a lot to say here. One thing we wanted to try to do is to not trisect Caroline County, but because of where it's located on the easternmost part, that is landlocked on the easternmost part, we could not find a way to do that, while at the same time making sure that we had real contiguity on the western part of the Eastern Shore adjoining the Chesapeake. You'll notice 46B. 46B is the majority African-American district that had been a result of court Section 2 Voting Rights Act lawsuit many years ago. Both the existing districts, the LRAC plan and our plan, create that somewhat contorted district, but we make it much more compact while still achieving around 54% Black voting age population. So that you can now take the slides off. That is a summary of the plan. It was a pleasure to work with this commission. It really is, as I said, a model for the country because of how much they relied on consensus and people working together to try to solve what is a difficult problem of representing a diverse state like Maryland. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Okay, we are going to go next to the Senate bill, and we have a couple people that were still on this first list. It'll be like a lot of people to testify that are going to testify today, and they're signed up for both bills to just testify one time after both bills. So we will start now with Senate Bill SJ0002, and who's up on that?
So for the sponsor panel, we have Carl Arrow, Michelle Davis, and then Senator Griffith and Delegate Luebke, who are here to answer questions.
Okay, is Carl Arrow, I think you're going to start, correct? Carl, are you on?
I'm here.
Okay, go ahead.
All right. Thank you very much, Madam Chairwoman and members of the committee. Nice to be here this afternoon. As you know, this is my fifth go around with redistricting. I'm hoping it's my last. And so let me just go over a couple of things quickly. As I've said many times before, we all know that population grows, we know it shifts and so forth, and we have to make adjustments. The geography creates restraints, as do constitutional requirements. And while no plan is perfect, I know the plan put forth by the Legislative Redistricting Advisory Commission is, in my opinion, a very, very good plan. Its overall maximum variance is just under 8%, and that includes subdistricting. In the past, I will tell you that sometimes subdistricts did exceed that maximum 10% variance, which we had good valid reasons to do, such as county lines and so forth, especially when you're dealing with subdistricts. And we used those subdistricting as we did this plan this time around, pretty much in the way we've always had over the last 40 years. We maintained subdistricts pretty much where they were. We created a couple of new ones. And the idea behind this was basically to give due regard to county crossings, address differences between the jurisdictions. And so if we had to cross a line, we would, if at all possible, create a subdistrict in order to make sure that the folks in that area would not be overwhelmed by in an at-large district. and that has also, I would say, been the case in every redistricting I've worked on since 1981, 82. We always start with what's on the ground. And the reason for that is that these districts have been around a long time, some for many years, some for decades. And by the very existence of them lasting that long, they basically have created a community of interest that we wanted to keep together. So one of the goals was to preserve the cores of existing districts to the extent practicable as a way to preserve those communities of interest. So we made adjustments not only for population, but for Voting Rights Act concerns, but also in response to public input. We also had a good deal of public input, and we did the best we could with trying to make sure that we could keep communities of interest together. So that's, I think, well, let me point out a couple of things. We did create a couple of new sub-districts. We created in District 11, a sub-district in Baltimore County for Voting Rights Act purposes. We also created a sub-district in Carroll County, as well as, what's the other one? I think, I've lost my train of thought there, but Michelle's going to go over these and give you a little bit more detail on this. Basically, I think it's a good solid plan. I believe it meets the requirements of the Maryland Constitution. This was a collaborative process. The members of the commission, their staff, and Marylanders who testified and gave us input and feedback. So I think that's pretty much all I want to say at this point. I will point out, though, that one of the things that I've noticed that has really accelerated over time is that when somebody doesn't like a plan or they have an issue with part of a plan or whatever, the first word that comes out of their mouth is gerrymandered. And I don't believe this plan is gerrymandered. I don't think the plan we started with was gerrymandered. After all, it was found to be constitutional. So that's all I think what I have to say. So let me turn this over, if I can, to Michelle, and she's going to give you a little bit more detail on how the plan glues together.
Thanks, Carl. And before you go, Michelle, I would like to just mention that Delegate Eric Luedtke and Senator Melanie Griffith have both spent a lot of time on this committee and on these maps, and they are here today to answer any questions from legislators too. So Michelle Davis, do you want to go ahead?
Great, thank you. Good afternoon, chairs and members of the committee. I am going to sort of give you a brief summary or tour of the map, if you will. I'm going to share my screen here for a second or a few minutes here. Let's see. Okay. So if you can see this, I'm showing you the Senate districts first, just so you can get a sense of where the Senate districts are. And then I'm going to, while I'm talking, I'm going to have the actual map up with all of these sub-districts in it. And if we need to get it any closer, if you want to look closer or anything like that, after I go through my summary here, we can do that. But while I'm talking, I'll just leave this up. So I'm going to start with Western Maryland and sort of go around the state sort of in the different regions and just give a brief summary of how things have changed or stayed the same. So starting out with Western Maryland, there was population loss, as you know, from the census in Garrett and Allegheny. In Garrett, it was minus 4.3%, and in Allegheny, minus 9.3%. And that happened over the last decade. That necessitated districts 1 and 2 to move further east. In doing this, the commission was able to ensure that Cumberland resided all within one sub-district, which would be 1B. And I believe right now, Cumberland is split between 1B and 1C. Senate District 1's borders, because we had to move east, approached the city of Hagerstown, but the map ensures that all of Hagerstown is placed in one single member district, and that would be District 2B. Again, population loss in the region required Senate District 2 to extend across the Washington County, Frederick County border, and District 2A includes the city of Thurmont in northern Frederick, and it runs right up to the Carroll County border without crossing it. There was 16% population growth in the Frederick area, which caused Senate District 3 to take up less area, because when we have population growth, the districts actually shrink. So that Senate district includes all of the city of Frederick, Ballinger Creek, and Spring Ridge, and the additional suburbs along the I-270 corridor. Senate District 4 unites all of the rural and sort of exurban communities throughout Frederick. Now going further east toward Carroll County and Baltimore County, population growth in Carroll County allowed the creation of a single member delegate district, which would be 42C. And that is in the county along the Baltimore County border. So that would be Eastern Carroll County. This subdistrict is part of Senate District 42, of course, and that district unites all of northern Baltimore County, which is largely split in the existing map. That district runs from the Cockeysville area and into the more rural portions of northern Baltimore County and crosses over into Carroll County. Also in Carroll is Senate District 5, which under the commission's map unites Sykesville and the town of Mount Airy, and no longer crosses into northern Howard County to the south as it does in the existing map. In western Baltimore County, Senate District 10, which is somewhat centered in Randallstown, remains similar to its existing configuration, but it did need to pick up population in the southwestern part of the county, mainly in the Catonsville area, to get into an acceptable population range. I believe that in District 10, in 2002, it was also went down into that Catonsville area as well. So there's some precedent for that. District 11 includes Owens Mills, Pikesville, Mays Chapel, and its boundaries are largely the same as the existing Senate district. What is different in the commission's recommended map is that Senate District 11 now includes a majority minority sub-district, which Carl spoke of earlier. And that was in response to testimony, analysis, and advice provided by the AG's office, the Attorney General's office. In Eastern Baltimore County, Senate District 8 retains the vast majority of its current residents and its border. Small adjustments were made mostly due to the crossing in Baltimore City and County in District 43, which is adjacent to it. Senate District 7 remains in both Baltimore County and Harford County, as it does in the current map, but it now includes a delegate sub-district that takes into account the crossing of those county boundaries. And Senate District 6 was changed very little. So getting to Baltimore City, and I will try to zoom in just a little bit into Baltimore City while I'm talking about it. As you notice, there was significant population loss in Baltimore City, which necessitated at least one Senate district leaving the city. So that district was Senate District 44, which is now relocated in the western and southwestern Baltimore County area. The new Senate District 44 includes parts of Lockern, Woodlawn, Catonsville, Lansdowne, and Arbutus. So under the current map, Senate District 44 crossed over into Baltimore County, but with the removal of District 44 in this map from Baltimore City, Senate District 43 is now the district in Baltimore City that crosses over up into Baltimore County. And it crosses over in the Towson area right there. This crossing unites the communities within the York Road corridor. And the remaining Senate districts in Baltimore City were modified mainly for population purposes. Moving on to Howard and Montgomery County. In Howard, more of Ellicott City is included in Senate District 9. That was based on testimony that the commission heard. There was also testimony that if there was a need for a county crossing in Howard, it would make more sense to cross into Montgomery County as opposed to Carroll County. So as a result, Senate District 9 now crosses into the agricultural preserve area and the rural portion of northern Montgomery County, which is in the Damascus area. Senate District 13 in Howard County retains the vast majority of its current residents, and there were some minimal adjustments along its western border. In Montgomery County, I'll move just a little bit over here. In Montgomery County, Senate District 14 unites portions of Olney and Laytonsville. That was also mentioned in testimony to the commission. Rockville remains located wholly within District 17, as it is in the current map. Portions of Gaithersburg are moved to District 39 for population reasons, and the remaining districts in Montgomery County were not significantly changed. Moving further south to Anne Arundel and Prince George's area in Southern Maryland. In northern Anne Arundel and in eastern Howard County, we have Senate District 12, which includes a single member subdistrict for the Anne Arundel County portion. Senate District 31 becomes a 3-member delegate district. It was subdivided under the current map. And that portion or that district is representing Pasadena and the Lakeshore area as it does, or I should say as the same area that the current District 31B represents. And the new Senate District 31 also includes the Gambrills area. I know that can be a little confusing comparing the commission's map with the existing districts. Anyway, Senate District 33 adds Odenton to reduce the population in Senate District 32. And Senate District 33 is also split into 3 single member subdistricts. One subdistrict represents mostly Odenton, the other the Broadneck area, and the third would be sort of the rural portion, central portion of Anne Arundel County. Senate District 21 in northern Anne Arundel and Prince George's includes portions of Crofton, but it no longer includes the Odenton area because that's now in District 33 in the recommended map. Senate District 23, which covers the Bowie area, moved further south to respond to the population growth in Southern Maryland. The District 23 no longer has sub-districts because of the changing racial makeup in that area. The district itself, Senate District 23, that is 65% African-American. Minimal changes were made to District 24, 25, and 26, including a slight move to the south for District 25 and 26, and that was again to respond to the population growth or capture that population growth in Southern Maryland. Going a little bit further south, Senate District 27 continues to be in 3 counties, Calvert, Charles, and Prince George's. And it's right where the 3 counties converge there, and Subdistrict 27A picks up more of Charles County to accommodate for the growth in that county. The Senate District itself consists of 3 single-member delegate districts to make sure that each county has the possibility to elect their own representation. The boundaries for Senate District 28 and 29 were changed minimally for population balancing purposes. So now we're going to go back north to the Harford County area. In Harford County, Senate District 35 pushes further into Harford County as Senate District 36 pushes northward into Cecil there on the Eastern Shore to adjust for the population loss in the lower shore. Going down to the lower shore, Senate District 37 maintains the current, and I'll show you here, the current single member district 37A, which is a minority majority district that includes Cambridge on one end and Salisbury on the other. That single member district is 54% African American. And lastly, Senate District 38 includes 3 single member sub-districts designed to give Somerset, Wycomico, and Worcester the ability to elect their own delegates. So that's it for me. Were there any questions about the map? I know I went through a little quickly. Great.
Are there any questions for Michelle? Any questions for Senator Griffith or Delegate Luedtke? Okay. We will start with our witnesses then at 2.5 minutes per person. Starting out with Edward Johnson, Beth Huffnagel, and Liliana Norkadis.
Madam Chair, are we going to have an opportunity to ask a question of the citizens group?
Any questions for Michelle? Yes, I was planning on doing, well, I was planning on doing it all at one time if we could.
Sure, that's great. I just want to make sure I had an opportunity.
Okay. Okay, Edward Johnson?
Yes, I'm here.
2.5 minutes, sir.
Hi. Good afternoon, senators and delegates. If my connection goes out, if you don't stop hearing me speaking, my connections drop for about 20 seconds. I have testified 3 times before the Maryland Citizen Redistricting Commission, either in person or in writing, as well as published an opinion piece in Maryland Matters entitled, "Is Maryland Ready for Redistricting?" When Governor Hogan created the Maryland Citizen Redistricting Commission, he put mandates on them as to how they should redistrict. He did not trust his own commission to do the right thing in redistricting. These mandates made many of my members of my groups and other groups associated with the Maryland Legislative Redistricting Coalition not trust his commission. I decided to try and make a difference anyway, since redistricting is one of the most important issues in Maryland this year. One of the first things I noticed is that Governor Hogan had his Secretary of Planning, Robert McCord, sitting in as advisor at all meetings. Twice I testified, as well as suggested in my opinion piece, that they should have an advisor from the legislature. This suggestion was ignored, and it was never discussed at a public meeting. When the MRCC started redistricting using Professor Persili, it was like watching somebody attempt to complete a redistricting paint by numbers, painting of communities of Maryland, especially Baltimore County. Professor Persili knew nothing about the communities of Maryland. He would redistrict based on how the numbers fit together in a jigsaw puzzle without understanding the communities of Maryland and Baltimore County, or whether they really needed redistricting. I pointed out that the districts of north of Baltimore County, some of the districts of north of Baltimore already were competitive and should remain so. The commission ignored this advice and instead appeared to engage in redistricting for redistricting's sake, using Professor Nelly's numbers without looking into whether such redistricting was necessary or advance the interests of the community affected. The commission rushed in to get their maps done because they thought the LRC would introduce their maps at the special session. They appeared not to want to ask LRAC when they would complete their maps. If they had, they might have learned that they might not need to rush to get theirs done. In a meeting on October 27th, with the final meeting to be on November 3rd, 2 Republican delegates requested changes to the maps. They were both accommodated immediately. but they ignored and never discussed most of my suggestions to changes to the maps of Baltimore County. In addition, people on the east side of Baltimore testified that they did not want there to be combined with a district extending into Baltimore City. So at the last minute, the MRC changed the district to northwest side of Baltimore City to connect it to Baltimore County. In response, one commissioner said, "I do not have any testimony to stand on from the people who live in the Northwest to say that we do not want to and the intrusion into their area." There was never any testimony
Can I stop you for a second? I'm going to need you to wrap it up, sir.
I am wrapping up. Well, how could how could there be opposition testimony from those residents when there's never been an indication to the district counties that they would be made, or it's in sufficient time for them to learn that the changes were going to be made, incorporated into the final map? That's it.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Beth Huffnagel.
Good afternoon, everyone. A pleasure to be here again. Madam Chair, 2.5 minutes, does that cover both of the bills? Because I've submitted separate testimony for each.
Yes, go ahead.
Very well. I'll do a compare and contrast. My name is Beth Huffnagel. I'm representing the League of Women Voters of Maryland. It's a nonpartisan organization that has worked for over a century to empower voters. Based on careful study and internal consensus, the League has developed a position and advocates for a decennial redistricting process. Process is the key word, that reduces political polarization and builds trust among communities of interest. Maryland's redistricting process has improved so much compared to 2011. Transparency, accessibility of statewide hearings, a significant step toward maximum opportunity for public scrutiny. Releasing the maps before they were introduced is a wonderful thing. And the maps frequently reflect the testimony received. They improved on our substantially equal population position. And we appreciate that a new thing, GIS formats, were released for proposed and final maps for this. However, the timing for the Maryland Citizens Legislative Plan, where they had 3 rounds, and rounds were after they presented the maps so people had something to look at, was very helpful. In one way, the Maryland Citizens process did not align with our position of an independent commission, because the processes and standards whereby the governor appointed the 3 co-chairs who then selected the remaining 6 members was never explained. Going back to the legislative map, this process also could be improved. Our position of independent commission was not followed. The membership is neither impartial nor multi-partisan. Indeed, the meeting of December 22nd brought into doubt who actually drew the map. There was a complete lack of transparency as to when the proposed map would be released, when the final map would be voted on, when it would be presented in the General Assembly, with preparation time for one voting session as short as 3 hours notice. We have evaluations from nonpartisan groups. The Princeton Gerrymandering Project and the Campaign Legal Center did not have enough time to—
Ms. Huffnagel, if you could wrap it up, please.
Yes, ma'am. Did not have enough time. They were not given the map ahead of time to grade it. The Citizens map has ordered a grade of A for that, and they did have enough time to do it. We could recommend that Maryland needs redistricting reforms codified in law.
Okay, thank you very much. Liliana Norquidez, 2.5 minutes, please.
Okay, good afternoon, members of the committee. My name is Liliana Norquidez, and I request your unfavorable report of Senate Joint Resolution 2. I am 17 years old and a resident of Harford County who will vote for the first time in this year's primary. The maps presented in this resolution are disheartening. They're not fair, they're not concise, and they are not representative of the state of Maryland. 3 years ago, in my freshman year of high school, I took Honors American Government, where my teacher, Mr. Hoover, gave us resources and definitions to fill this giant composition book. And one of those that he defined was gerrymandering, which is the process of dividing a geographical area into an electoral district to give an unfair political advantage to a party or group. This year in AP Human Geography, my teacher taught us that there are 2 different types of gerrymandering, packing and cracking. This is exactly what I see happening with the maps proposed, by the Legislative Redistricting Advisory Committee. There are many maps in this proposal that are not fair, but there is one in particular that baffles me the most. In Frederick County, the proposal has the city of Frederick enclosed by District 4 as if it is a ring around a bullseye. The last time I checked, having a gaping hole in the middle of a district is not concise. This is a perfect example of packing, where as many blue votes as possible are put into District 3 for the purposeful partisan favor. I currently reside in District 7, where I have 3 delegates, but the proposed maps have placed me in District 7B, where I will only have 1 delegate. This not only silences my district from having an equal voice to all other districts, but it also says that one district is more important than the other. The entire proposal is flawed because of the continuous institution of unequal representation of multi-member districts. No district, regardless of county, socioeconomic status, or partisan lead, should have their vote diluted in the legislature. To have truly fair maps, you must end the practice of unequal multi-member districts. Single-member maps, or even at least an equal number of delegates in every district, is the fairest way of ensuring equal representation. The current proposal is the definition of taxation without representation, and it must not pass. The maps are not concise as they were promised to be, and it is unfair to the citizens of Maryland. I urge that you reconsider selecting maps that have equal representation, because my voice in 7B—
Can you wrap it up, please?
Yes, my voice in 7B should be equal to the voices of everyone across our beautiful state of Maryland. I want to thank you for your time and once again request your unfavorable report of SJ2 so that when I vote in June, I have the same number of delegates as everyone else. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, Paul Sundell. Paul Sundell still here?
State of Maryland. I want to thank you for your time and once again request your unfavorable report of SJ2 so that when I vote in June.
Paul Sundell, last call. Okay, how about Carlos Sanchez?
Yes, hello. Good afternoon.
Can you hear me?
Oh.
Can you hear me? I'm sorry. I could not. I did not get on muted in time. My name is.
All right, this is Paul Sundell.
Yes.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Sundell. 2.5 minutes.
Okay. Yes, I do want. I do live in Vernon Park. I'm a registered Democrat, and I strongly back the Maryland's Citizens Redistricting map, and I totally oppose the congressional redistricting map. I've attended numerous redistricting meetings, both through Zoom and live, and it's clear people do want compact, non-gerrymandered districts. And if you compare the 2 maps, the legislative district maps are by far less compact. A simple measure is perimeter divided by area, and I'm sure there are not measures provided, but one just looks at one looks at this, and it's clear. The Maryland Citizens Redistricting map is far more compact, and 2, the legislative redistricting map has many single districts. That means the outer areas are not only gerrymandered, but the internal areas are gerrymandered too, where the citizens only can vote for one delegate. This is very unfair to have some areas where you can vote for 3, and then you have other areas where you can only vote for 1, and not only and legislators are not always equal in the services that they give to the in their area. So so I
Sundell, can you begin to wrap it up, please?
County, it again is getting the short end of the deal. I am going to be my district 33 will be split up into 3 separate parts. It's gerrymandered to the nth degree, and people are sick and tired of it. And it's a major threat to democracy, and both parties do it, and it's disgusting.
Thank you, Mr. Sundell. We appreciate you testifying.
And I will likely not vote for any politician that votes for a map such as this. That shows me they can't be trusted in protecting democracy.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Okay, next on our list is Carlos Sanchez.
Good afternoon, Madam's Chair, and members of the committees. Hello, it's good to see everyone, even if it is Brady Bunch style like this. So I'm here today just testifying as a resident of Prince George's County, a resident of Carroll Highlands. I was actually asked to come and testify by the president of our neighborhood association here in Carroll Highlands in the redistricting. So this is in support of 002 with an amendment. So in the redistricting process, what happened was that our neighborhood was actually split into 2, and there are about 19 to 20 houses and 1 small multifamily dwelling that has been moved into a separate legislative district. And so our community actually has a lot of natural borders already. To the west of us, we have Montgomery County and the city of Tacoma Park. To the north, we have University Boulevard and some commercial establishments. To the east, we have Riggs Road, and then south of us, we have Pepco power lines. So the community is very enclosed, and this small group of houses have been moved out of the district. It splits us up. Obviously, when we're advocating for things, it just makes things a little bit more cumbersome for us. Also, in thinking about voting, it moves these families out of being able to vote at our school in our neighborhood, and they're moved to a totally different precinct, which is farther away, and it may impact the ability for some of these folks to vote. The president actually tried to submit a letter that has the map on it. I emailed it to, I think the email of both of the chairs. I don't know if it's been able to be disseminated to everyone else. I'm happy to email it again. But once again, we would like to see if these small number of houses could be included back into their original district, so we can keep our community all whole. Other than that, though, just thank you for your time, and it's good to see everyone again.
Thank you, Mr. Sanchez. Okay, Catherine Berry, are you here to give testimony, or did you just do written? It says both on here.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair.
Go ahead.
We should also have an invite for David Garris and Rui Lavoy with Mayo as well. We are here just to give information in addition to our written testimony, and David is going to start. Thank you.
Okay. Go ahead.
I'm not sure that David Garris has been left in the room yet.
David Garris, are you in the room yet?
He's having trouble connecting to the audio.
Okay, do you want to just go ahead and one of you start?
Okay, yes, hold on 1 minute. Yes, so Madam Chair, members of the committee, thank you so much for letting us speak today on behalf of the Maryland Association of Election Officials. We wanted to just give a brief overview of the timeline that we are very concerned about to implement all of the maps. So this is the first time in Maryland where the maps have to be approved so close to the primary election. We've never encountered this in 2000 or 2010. So there are a lot of logistical concerns to making sure that we meet the election law deadlines and changing the maps in our voter registration database over. In some counties, to make these changes, it does involve a significant amount of money, along with other resources like GIS and the other mapping departments in the local boards of elections. And with that, we also have redistricting occurring at the same time that we are trying to recruit election judges, prepare mail-in ballot applications, and the election judge manuals. When we logistically do redistricting, each street address has to be reviewed manually. So
can I get you to start wrapping up, please?
Yes. So we are just very concerned that the amount of time that we are being allotted is a lot less than the normal time frame to be able to implement something that is so critical. And so I will turn it over to Roy Lavoie.
Okay, thank you.
So
are you going next?
Yes, ma'am. Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. I am the director of Baltimore County Board of Elections, and we have about 600,000 registered voters. So I have several concerns similar to Ms. Berry's. Logistically, being able to notify the voters of changes in precincts and retaining enough election judges to serve the voters during early voting and on election day. As Ms. Berry stated, that the changes we have to make have to be made manually. And if there's new polling places, that would require additional equipment, and there's not enough time to order that equipment to be properly prepared for new polling places. And in addition to that, the cost that to send notifications to all the voters so they go to the correct polling place. So our concern is just time-wise, having enough time to make all of the necessary preparations in order to conduct successful elections throughout Maryland. Because in an ideal situation, we could look at all of the maps at the same time, congressional, legislative, and our local maps, when we look at each address and decide whether they need to be moved or split into a different precinct. And that's the best way for us to be the most accurate as possible, rather than doing it 3 different times. So if our county approves our councilmatic districts and we change the lines, and then the legislative and then the congressional, we're touching it so many times, and the possibility of an error is greater. So again, just that's our concern, is the timeline, and for you just to know that it isn't just like we can push a button. We have to manually look at every address, and for my county, it's over 600,000 addresses. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Thanks for testifying. Okay, David Garris.
Good afternoon. Thank you to the committee for allowing me to speak. My name is David Garris. I'm the president of the Maryland Association of Election Officials. Redistricting is a race against the clock for the local boards of elections. So I want to make my points briefly. I'll give you a high-level overview, and if you have follow-up questions afterwards, we're happy to answer. Maryland, as far as redistricting goes for the local boards, is behind schedule. Delays in the redistricting process will impact the 2022 gubernatorial elections, including the candidate filing deadline, as well as the timeline for voter education regarding their new polling places or potential new districts. There is an 11-step process for the local boards to complete the redistricting project. Step 1 is the map approval that you, the legislature, are now doing. As we noted earlier, in 2010, there was the gubernatorial election, but the primary election was in September. And in 2000, there was a presidential election, so the local and legislative districts were not as critical. So this is kind of the perfect storm as far as legislative and congressional and county council districts needing to be completed before the election in order for us to have everything ready. So that's step one. Step two is mapping the changes at the local level, including potentially creating more precincts and polling places. Step three is manual review of a street information. This goes street by street, line by line. Some jurisdictions have more than 30,000 streets and hundreds of thousands of addresses and data points that must be reviewed. It is no small task to complete this project. So we're asking for your time to make your decisions promptly. Step four is determine if the number of voters for each of your new election districts. Step five is determine whether new polling places are needed and where they are needed. This is the physical polling place, the physical requirements as far as voting equipment, the election judges that need to be assigned, the number of voters that can be accommodated. Do you have enough parking? So these are all things that we need to think about and we need time to implement in order for us to take the theoretical concept of these maps into real live election day polling places. Step six is the considerations of ballots required as far as ordering, as far as making sure that we have all of our ballot styles in place. Thank you for your time, and we're available for questions.
Thank you very much. Thanks for testifying. Okay, I think our first question comes from Senator Simon Ayer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First, I wanted to thank all those involved, going throughout the state, listening to the people on both commissions. It was a lot of work, a lot of time, a great public service, and I just want to publicly acknowledge everyone that did that. Is Walter still on the Zoom call?
Yes, I am.
Yes, one thing caught my attention. I was listening to the chair of the Legislative Redistricting Commission, and he was saying that they were highlighting that they brought it down to 8% variance between population, between districts, the whole districts. I just want to make sure I heard you correctly, because I know sometimes, districts can be gerrymandered through packing and underrepresentation. Did you say it was 2% in the citizens map, or did I get that wrong?
There's two ways of describing it, Senator. 8% is the same thing I mean when I say plus or minus 4%. You see, it's a spread of 8% above and below the optimal or the exact population number. Our Senate districts have a 4% spread of 2% higher or 2% lower. So we are proud that we got a significantly narrower variance in the districts than LRAC did. And I can tell you, we worked very hard on that, and particularly Professor Persily worked very hard on that to get those closer to exact population equality.
And last question, if you know, and if you don't, you can get back with me. What is plus or minus 2% as far as numbers for districts? How many basically?
For a Senate district, so someone may want to send me a lifeline. I would have remembered this when we were having the hearings.
You can get back to me. There's
no Walter, I could answer that if you'd like.
Yeah, thanks.
So it's about 2,550 people is what plus or minus 2,550 people in a Senate district is what would be about 2%.
Okay, and again, thank you all for the work you did. I'm sure Maryland really appreciates it. Thank you.
Okay, Senator West.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the last speaker, whose name I can't recall, who spoke on behalf of the Maryland Association of Election Officials, raised some of the issues that I raised when we had the congressional redistricting hearing, namely the logistical issues. And he didn't get a chance to finish, but I've got his 4-page memo in front of me. We all should have received it. So if he's still on, I'd like to ask him to address two issues that he didn't get a chance to. And one is the acquisition of election equipment, which the memo says typically requires a 6 to 12 month notice in advance. So if we're going to create a lot of new election precincts, because we're splitting so many precincts in half, is there time between now and the primary election to acquire all this election equipment that will be required? And then the second thing is the recruitment and training of judges. In my district alone, on my count, this is the General Assembly plan, is that 29 precincts have been split. So the easiest way to handle that is leave one as the original precinct number and just create a new precinct for the other piece. That's 29 new precincts. You have 4 election judges apiece. That's 116 election judges just in my legislative district alone. Do the election boards have the capacity to find, hire, and train that many new election judges in order to run the primary election acceptably?
Mr. Garris, can you answer that? David Garris, do you want to answer that question?
I'm sorry. Can you repeat the question? I'm sorry. I apologize for that.
That's okay. Let me make, you're speaking on behalf of the Maryland Association of Election Officials?
That's correct.
Okay. So I wanted to cover 2 things that you didn't get a chance to cover. One is the acquisition of election equipment. If we create new precincts, we're going to need new machinery in each of those precincts to conduct the voting. And your memo indicates that it takes 6 to 12 months. We don't have 6 to 12 months. So what are we going to do about that? And number 2 is the question of election judges. In my district alone, I computed that if we create 29 new precincts, we would need 116 election judges. Do we have the ability to recruit, train, and get that many new election judges in place by election day?
Those are both great questions. Thank you for asking them. I will say that the question about election judges and voting equipment they're both connected. In the event that we needed to, we might have to move election equipment from one jurisdiction to another. That might mean moving voting equipment from Cecil County to Anne Arundel County, or maybe the other way, in order to make sure that everyone has the allocation that they need. The other option that exists is creating vote centers, kind of creating like an ad hoc vote center. Whereas if you can't create, 10 new polling places because you don't have the election judge availability, nor do you have the equipment, we could go into the server system and create basically what we would consider like something like a vote center. So where you would have 3 or 4 or 5 polling places at a local high school. So 1-1, 1-2, 1-3, polling place 1-1 might go to the high school, and that might be the one that's inside the district. And then polling place 1-2 might also be assigned to the high school. Now, they would each have their own ballot style, so the voters there would be able to vote for the proper candidates when they're checked in. However, because of the lack of buildings, the lack of election judges, and the lack of equipment, you would have 2 groups of people going to the same polling place. It would be not unlike an early voting site, except it would only be for election day, and it would only work for the people that are assigned to that specific location.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
I answered your question.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks.
All right, thank you.
Okay, Delegate Zaliga.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. I would like to know if, just from a process standpoint, can we get all of this testimony posted up on the website? I went on my laptop, none of it's there. The pictures of the maps that were presented, it would be really nice because obviously the bills are all in words and, the pictures are much more helpful. So please, if we can get them posted up, that would be very helpful.
We'll find that out.
Thank you. And including the PowerPoint by, I think, Nathaniel Persilli, his PowerPoint was helpful. It would be nice if we could have access to that, minimally email it all around to all of us, but posting it would be helpful for the public as well. And with regards to that, Mr. Persilli, you had a slide on your PowerPoint. I took a picture of it because I don't have a copy of it. And you called it number of split counties. Is that where a district crosses into 2 or more counties? I hope you're still on here.
Yes, I'm here. That's
okay.
Right. So if a district crosses over into a county, then that counts as one split. And so we tally up the number of counties that have a district that traverses them, and then that's the number of split counties.
Okay, and I noticed that when Michelle was going through the LRAC map, she talked about a county over in Charles, Prince George's, St. Mary's, I think, that has 3 counties in one district. Did you count any of that up? One legislator that's representing 3 counties. Obviously on the shore, the counties are smaller, but on the Western Shore, that's not as big a problem.
I want to make sure I understand your question. Do you mean the number of districts the number of counties crossed over by a given district, or do you mean the number of times a county is split? So those are actually two different numbers. And so in the commission plan, there are no districts that themselves traverse over 3 counties, right? So we did the minimal number of splits that we could given the population variance. And so that means that the districts will just go over, every district at most is shared by 2 counties. There's no districts that are shared by 3 counties. And so that's just, a consequence of the fidelity to political subdivision lines of the commission plan. There are some places like Caroline County, which is split into 2 Senate districts and 3 delegate districts, where that was the one area where we sort of felt painted into a corner, but otherwise you don't see that anywhere. Right now, of course, the large counties, Baltimore, Prince George's, Montgomery, are going to have multiple districts in them. So there are many that are so it looks like those are inevitably going to be split, but we did not a single district in our plan crosses into 3 counties. They all at maximum, it's just crossing from one county into another.
Okay, thank you. And finally, I guess Carl or Michelle, can you tell us who drew the maps? Was it you guys? Was it the commission, the Maryland Citizen Commission was very transparent. Everyone's name was listed. They worked very much in public. So if you can tell us who actually drew the maps, did it cost taxpayers money? Did you hire outside consultants? And is that information public?
The maps were drawn as a collaborative effort based on from the members of the commission, their staffs, and what we heard in public testimony. There was no I'm not running the department anymore, but I know the department budgets for redistricting. We do that we did it under my term. Every 10 years, we put money in for redistricting for equipment and so forth. But that's the answer to your question.
And so Michelle, is the list of the staff from DLS that worked on it, is that public? Is it listed somewhere?
No, I don't believe there's an official list, but we have several analysts. It kind of all depends on what aspect of this you're speaking of. Our job is broken down into many separate tasks. We have people doing bill drafting and people doing line drawing and so on and so on. So it's not just one particular task. It's a group of tasks, and some people do one task and some people do it all.
I find it very interesting. Nobody's ever asked us before when we draft for other bills for anybody who did it. It's a bill drafter. It's a professional thing. If they're, as I pointed out, that basically it was a collaborative process. It involved the commission members, their staffs, and the staff of DLS primarily to do basically the technical, pushing a mouse around on a computer screen. Okay. I hope that answers your question.
And you're saying there were no outside consultants? I know that was what happened in 2010. There were outside consultants that came in. Did you do that this year? I
didn't see anybody come in. We didn't hire anybody. I mean, just like, yeah, we had nobody, to my knowledge, come in and do anything. If that was happening, it wasn't happening in front of my face, so I can't answer that. But no, the answer is no, we had no outsiders.
Okay, Michelle, you would say the same. There was no consultant or outside person that came?
No, there's been no DLS staff that have been involved with an outside consultant. As far as we know, there have been no consultants. We have not hired any.
Okay, thank you so much.
Delegate Luedtke.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Garris, I want to focus back on this elections question. I wasn't clear from your testimony what Mayo's ask is, because the timeline of the approval of the maps is largely determined by the state constitution on one end and by, frankly, our setting of the primary date, which is influenced by federal law related to the time needed to send ballots to military and overseas voters. So what in particular are you asking us to do?
Thank you for the question. This testimony is informational, so we're not asking for anything per se. We are putting it out there that the decisions that you make need to be made as quickly as possible, because after this, there is a lot of work that needs to be done in order for the maps, the precincts, the polling places, the election judges, et cetera, to be ready for the election. We already have election dates, like I noted in the testimony, that are going to be impacted the longer this draws out. In particular, the candidate filing deadline in February. And of course, we have the voter education campaign that we need to conduct. We need time to be able to do all these activities and tasks. So we are planning to do them, but it's just a note that if this draws out, it puts more and more of these things at risk. So
Gotcha.
We wanted to make sure everybody had that message and everybody was aware.
I appreciate it. So the bottom line is we need to move quickly to make sure you all can do your jobs. I also want to ask a question to clarify. I think there was some confusion earlier because Senator West was positing a scenario where, if you have sort of 29, I think that was your number, Senator West, 29 precincts where you had some splitting of precincts by the new maps, but the normal course in a situation like that wouldn't be for the local board of elections to necessarily create 29 new precincts, right? You would rearrange the precinct configuration and probably result with somewhere around the same number of precincts you have right now. Otherwise, you'd have an exponential increase in precincts over the decades, right?
Addressing your question to me?
Yeah.
You're correct in that our starting point is going to be the precincts as they currently exist, and then we will edit them. But we overlay the congressional, the legislative, and the county council maps over top of each other to create these specific areas where you have, your polling places. If the overlay is dramatic enough, then we won't be able to use the existing polling places as they're configured, or the precincts as they're configured.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So it depends. And if you have, if your legislative map makes some pretty significant changes, that can force you to have to change the precincts. Or, Anne Arundel is a good example. When we bring in the first congressional district, if we have to do that, then, you're going to have something like 220,000 voters who will be affected. So.
But the new precincts will be publicly discussed in the respective local board of elections for each county, right? So the public will have a chance to weigh in.
That is part of the state guidelines and election law, that they have to be publicly on their website, that they're going to be discussed, and then the board has to review it and approve it in an open meeting.
Thank you, and thank you to you and all the folks from Mayo. We know it's been a stressful couple of years for elections administrators, and we appreciate all your work keeping democracy going.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Delegate Riley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, my first question would be to Mr. Garys. Yours first. We'll go with you first since you were just talking. So have you had a chance, because the maps have been out there for a little while, have you had a chance to look at them to see which map currently, which legislation would be the easiest and the least expensive? Or haven't even had a chance to do that?
We haven't done anything like that. As far as ease of implementation, it's up to the legislature and county council, if that's the form of the county government, to determine the boundary lines.
Okay, alrighty. And my next question, thank you very much. Next question would be for Mr. Persley. You still on the line?
Yep, I'm here.
Hi. Again, on your slide, that the power presentation was awesome. I would like a copy as well. I remember looking at a slide, and I didn't take a picture, to where you showed the precincts, whether they were single or split to 2 and 1, or if they were all 3. I noticed that you had 87 single districts, which is great. And then the other 57, were any of those split, or they were all 3 member districts?
They remain all 3.
Okay.
The negotiation between the commissioners was such that they said either it's going to be a single member district, and this is all public record. The initial draft of the map was all single member districts, right, and then several of them were combined into triple member districts.
Okay, great. So that's kind of leads to I think, fair 1 vote, 1 person, 1 vote, either single or all 3. So I do believe that is fair. So thank you for working that out. And the other part was back to basically what Senator Simon-Eyre was talking about, was the percentage difference between the senatorial districts. We'll do it as a senatorial. I went through the LRAC, and it looks like, I think it's District 11 has 126,206 voters that could vote out of those, out of the Senate or the 3 delegates. And then we have District 32 under the LRAC that has 136,574 votes. So that's a big difference. It's not the 2,500 that you mentioned that your commission tried, that the Citizens Commission tried to do. But that's, according to my calculation, 10,368 votes difference. That just doesn't seem to be very fair either. So I guess that just proved what Mr. Arrow had said, that they kind of stayed with that 10%, 8% variance difference. Is that,
yeah,
the
commission I was directed for the Senate plan to have a plus or minus 2% variance, right? So no district was going to be more than 2,500 over the ideal population. The LRAC plan is twice that. So the total range is going to be over 10,000, about 10,500 people, because that would be plus or minus 4%, or a total deviation of a range of 8%.
Okay, well, thank you for that clarification. My last question, Madam Chair, would be for Mr. Arrow. He's still on the line there.
Carl, you still on? There you go.
Yeah. Hi, Mr. Arrow. How are you? So when you were testifying, you had mentioned that you basically kind of stayed with what we had, and you didn't look at changing it too much. And according to your information, you said that you were comfortable with that 10%, 8%. So are you saying that you didn't even kind of take that into consideration to try to change the districts to get it a little bit closer, or you just went with what you had and didn't even address that issue?
I think the way to look at it is, when you're starting with the districts that exist, and the goal is to try to continue those districts for purposes of continuing what I believe are communities of interest as a result of these districts being around for a long time, you need to make adjustments based on the population shifts. If you want to throw out everything and erase everything and start over, then it probably makes it easier to come to a more exact, if you want, or lower variance overall. But if you're trying to maintain the existing districts for those continuity purposes, for those community of interest purposes, then it's a little bit more difficult to try to do that. The goal was always to make sure, with all the years, I'm talking history now, all the years was always to be at less than 10%. Not that it's a safe harbor, but it has been defined as being substantially equal. And you can even go beyond that, as long as you have good reasons to do so, which have to do with things like community of interest and so forth, which is why I pointed out that in the past, some sub-districts were well beyond that by a couple of percentage points, because there was a need to kind of take a certain area and make it a sub-district so that those people would have the opportunity to elect. Okay. So I don't know if this is going to be a direct answer to you, but the bottom line is, did we try to get down to 0? No, we didn't because we didn't have to. But we did try to maintain and try to bring it down as much as we could with those other goals in mind. And that was, again, the continuity of the districts, preserving the cores of existing districts, because those essentially, after being in existence, some of them for, well, quite honestly, since the 1980s, communities of interest. People know who they are. And so.
Okay. Thank you very much. I appreciate your answer.
Thank you. Senator Washington.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And again, thank everyone for participating in this process. I know that it takes a lot of time and due diligence, and I appreciate the citizens of Maryland who voluntarily participated in this. I actually wanted to ask two questions, and the first one is generated by the good delegate around costs. I was contemplating, I was looking at and also Mr. Arrow's statement about continuity. In the Maryland Citizens Redistricting Advisory Commission, Maryland Citizens Commission, the map you recommended had completely redrawn the numbers. In other words, my district, or the district in which I live, goes from being 43 to, I think it's 22 or something. So I guess this question, would I be right in thinking that if we were to adopt that map with that numbering system in terms of the costs, would there be a great deal of changes that would need to be made from signage to voting cards? And does that cause some kind of disruption? Is that anything the committee anticipated or contemplated?
Is that a question for me?
That could be the county, and that also could be Mr. Persily or anybody from the citizens. That
I would start out by saying, if I could, the governor's executive order directed that the legislative districts be renumbered from the northwest part of the state. And the senator is touching on a sensitive point, because we got more complaints about the renumbering of the legislative districts than about most of the substantive issues. We were bound, of course, by the language of the governor's order. I would defer to the election administrators from the counties as to whether or not calling a district by a different number, when all the materials I would gather would have to be printed up new anyway, whether that does impose more cost on them. But again, that's for them to answer. It never came up in testimony, even though people were complaining for reasons of confusion and disorientation about the renumbering, but no one ever brought up that point.
Well, actually, thank you, and I'll have the administrator address this later. But you raise an important question about the citizens map, or the map that was recommended by individuals appointed by the governor, and it has to do with this, I guess, critique that we just heard, or testimony that we just heard about the stipulations placed on the Citizens Committee. So the LRAC was driven by by our state constitution, and some expansion of court, of case law, et cetera. And I think I heard you say that the Citizens Commission, or this group, the map that you drew, the things that you were contemplating, were bound to the language of the governor. So that implies to me that the governor was drawing the map because of the ways in which the lines were that you were restricted in considering other things. Is that correct, that you were guided by? Yeah, I'm just trying to understand.
And any of our other chairs are free to answer this too. We were indeed obliged to follow the executive order, which did not mean that we were obliged to consider the wishes of the governor or anyone in his office. You mentioned the renumbering, and for whatever reason, we did the renumbering as requested. Both we and LRAC, of course, had to follow the Maryland Constitution and all applicable laws. So in that respect, there is no difference. I will mention one area which was the subject of enormous amount of discussion, which was the governor's executive order directed us to do single member delegate districts to the extent consistent with our other responsibilities. And interpreting that fairly took a great deal of discussion in which there were many points of view. We wound up creating a lot of triple member districts, which a working plurality of our commission decided was consistent with the idea that our other responsibilities, the other responsibilities placed on us to reflect the wishes of the different sections of the state, meant potentially bending a little bit from what others of us on the commission believed were the direct instructions, make them single member districts. So there were interpretive questions, but yes, when we were told to ignore the interests of incumbents, by golly, we ignored the interests of incumbents. That's something that LRAC was not told to do, and presumably also did not do. Our commission definitely did work under different instructions. It's not the Maryland Constitution that ordered us to ignore the interests of incumbents. That was part of the governor's executive order.
Right. So just to be, and thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to make ensure that the audience and that the committee were hearing that there were that the LRAC Commission abided by the state constitution and recommendations in the state constitution. But here I'm hearing testimony that says the citizens bill, that the map that was not simply by constitution, but by the executive order, who the executive order came from the governor. So I just wanted to make clear. We were equally
under obligation to consider the Maryland Constitution as LRAC was, and we
but
took
you had just to be clear, you had additional constraints placed on you by the executive order.
We had to meet a more demanding standard because we had to do all of the same things as LRAC as far as following the Maryland Constitution and all other applicable laws. And we had additional constraints placed on us, such as not being able to consult political data.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you for your hard work.
Thanks.
Could I also add just one thing there to bring us full circle, which is that a plan that is designed to change the existing districts the least amount as possible is very different than a plan that has to ignore the existing districts. And so they're going to be really apples and oranges. In fact, today I was special master for the congressional redistricting process in Connecticut, and I released my plan today where I was ordered by the court to just do a least change plan. And so now people are, saying, well, no, I should have done much more in terms of protecting subdivisions and the like. So the criteria that the recipe that goes into a redistricting plan will, determine what is cooked by it. And so that's why these are very different plans, the ones that come out of the LRAC process and those that come out of the process of the commission.
Well, that just raises one more, if I could. So have you had experience where a governor by executive order has provided specific instructions about how lines should be drawn by executive order?
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I have not personally.
I don't think I've ever heard of that. I think, yeah, okay.
Well,
thank you very much.
It really sort of depends on how the commissions are put together and how much control of the governors versus the commission. So I was the consultant for Utah, for example, and the Utah commission was developed by initiative, by popular initiative, and frankly, the criteria they're actually not that different than what you have in Maryland, but they came up through a popular lawmaking process.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you
very much.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Okay, Senator Kelly.
Yes, I just want to speak to the concerns that have been raised regarding timing things, and that what the legislative committee did was done very late and that you don't have a lot of time. I want to remind everybody, however, that the former president of the United States was almost half a year late getting the census data to the states. So that I really think that was the basis of the problem. I think no matter how maps were drawn here and elsewhere, the people who are inhabitants of states and those who drew maps for the states really were in a bind in terms of time. because the Trump administration didn't behave in a professional manner and didn't get the census data to the states in a timely way. And that's all I want to say.
Thank you, Senator Kelly. Senator Eckert, we've got 2 more questions here, and then I'm going to say that we wrap it up. If you still have more questions and you want to get to us, we'll get some answers for you, but we are going to need to wrap this up this afternoon. Senator Eckert.
All of our participants, I just wanted to say thank you very much for the diligence and attention everyone has put on this very complicated process, and it seems to get more complicated all the time. But I just had one question that I haven't heard of that has been a major concern in all the years that I have been elected in a rural area, and that is that every county be represented by at least one resident elected person. Can anybody tell me, and I haven't done a quick count, do all of the counties have at least one elected senator or delegate? And was that, or has that been taken into consideration?
Madam Chair, I think I can answer that question, if it's okay. Thank you, Senator, for the question. That actually was front and center in the LRAC's conversations. And as you know, it's the biggest place where it's an issue are in some of our smaller counties. So yes, we drew the map as much as possible to make sure that every county would have an opportunity to elect a legislator of their choosing to the General Assembly. That drove, I mean, it was easier with Garrett County, frankly, because of population, but it drove the construction of the districts, particularly around Somerset County and Kent County and Caroline County. So, you know, there is a little bit of a challenge, and I think we faced it just because of the way population worked out. Caroline County did end up being split in 2 districts on our map, but the way the population lays out, they will still have the strong potential of electing a resident delegate.
Thank you. And there also is some other language in the law that precludes in certain counties 2 being elected from one jurisdiction.
That's correct. In the 3-member, and that applies particularly in the 3-member districts on the Eastern Shore, you don't want a situation where, you know, you might have 2 delegates elected from Cecil County, but none from Kent County, for example.
Yeah, and just one more observation. I know we have growing minority populations on the shore in many places. And I would just say that there are some of the districts that are not balanced. I mean, they are by numbers, but they're not by county. So if you have a member of the minority in one county who would like to run, by nature of the way those boundaries are drawn, that person cannot run and be elected where they live. And I didn't know if that had been taken into consideration as well, looking at the various percentages of minority populations to ensure that everyone did have an opportunity. And the reason I bring this up is that I know when I attended a number of the redistricting meetings, there were members from the community who were looking for, particularly on the Eastern Shore, a second minority district. So I just was curious what the conversation was about that.
Yeah, and we had testimony in the LRAC, significant testimony about, frankly, completely redrawing the boundaries on the shore. Just the way the population worked out, it was very difficult, nigh impossible, to draw 2 fully majority districts just by the way the minority population is spread out on the shore. So we maintain one district that is the current district that's majority minority, but as minority populations have grown in many parts of the state, but also on the shore, for example, you know, around the city of Salisbury, those voters will have more of a chance to elect minority legislators if that's their choice, right? Because the ultimate goal is that voters are able to choose the legislators of their choice.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, our last question, Senator Young.
Thank you. Again, I congratulate everyone for their good work too, but I have a question about direction. Mr. Arrow, maybe this goes to you. I know we have 3-member districts, 2 and 1 and 1, 1 and 1. I don't see any pattern where we've been heading one direction or the other to conform them. But I particularly look at my area. Senate District 1 has a 2-1 delegate district. District 2 has 2-1. District 5's proposed for 2-1. District 3 right now has 2-1. District 4 is 3-0. We were proposed to go to 3-3. It seems to me it would have made a lot more sense to make District 4 2-1 and had all of Western Maryland conformed. Or the Republicans in the past asked District 4 to be all single-member districts, and very frankly, we agreed with that. What is the basis for the decisions you make on whether you do 3-0, 2-1, or 1-1-1?
Well, I think, again, District 1, as I recall, is A, B, and C. So there's 3 single-member districts. And it's a matter of how that moves across. And since Western Maryland has not grown as quickly as the rest of the state, it was necessary to move those districts to the east. Since I got involved in 1981-82, District 1 had always been 3 single-member districts. And so we kept that. District 2 varied back and forth, obviously, and so forth. But I think it comes down to trying to preserve county lines, trying to preserve municipal boundaries, the due regard clauses, as well as meet the population. I don't think that there was an ironclad rule that we employed with that, but to the extent there was a rule, it was to take into consideration when building subdistricts what you would need to do in order to try to give due regard to communities as well as of jurisdictional boundaries, natural boundaries, and that sort of thing.
Well, I was most interested in my county.
In Frederick County.
Yes.
Basically, we wanted to keep the city of Frederick together, and the rest of it just went into an at-large and tried to keep it as much in Frederick. I think it crosses a little bit. I'm not sure it does cross a little bit, actually.
Well, no, 2 comes into Frederick a little bit.
Yeah, but that was a function of the population.
But 3's been 2 and 1. Didn't see a reason to change that, and could have had a minority district out of that. And
Mr. Chairman, perhaps I
could have easily been 2 and 1.
I'd yield to Delegate Lukey.
Yeah, so the constitutional default is for 3-member districts, right? We draw single-member districts when necessary to observe the boundaries of communities of interest, and particularly municipal and county boundaries, and to ensure that particularly communities of interest can have the ability to elect delegates of their choosing. So, in the case of Frederick County, we had a population decrease in Western Maryland that pushed the 1st district east and then the 2nd district east. And when the 2nd district had to cross the Frederick-Washington County line, we looked at where it would make the most sense. And so Thurmont has more in common with a lot of Northern Washington County, so that was the logical crossing.
No problem with that.
Right. So then you have the 3rd and the 4th. And what happened, as you know, is that Frederick County is one of the fastest growing counties in the state of Maryland. Mm-hmm. And the 3rd district in particular had previously had a 2-1 configuration because the 2-member district was centered on the city of Frederick, and the 1-member district was focused in the southwestern suburbs into the more rural southwest, like Brunswick and areas closer to the river, right?
Well, it was actually more east. Brunswick is District 4 now.
Right. So what we ended up doing here, because the population grew significantly in the city of Frederick and its close-in suburbs, was to concentrate the 3rd district around the city of Frederick and those close-in suburbs, which are a community of interest, combine the remainder of the 4th of the county in the 4th district. And because the city of Frederick doesn't have, it's one city, right? Then single-member districts become, not quite as necessary.
Well, the 2-1 still makes sense because Frederick city doesn't encompass the entire population for the 2-member district.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, the issue is that you had to shrink the district to better fit the population, right? And so, you know, you can make a really good community of interest argument for a place like Ballinger Creek to be in with Frederick City. It's a little harder to make that argument the further you get away from the city itself into, you know, more agricultural parts of the county. So
I hate to do this, but I'm going to interrupt. Senator Young, if you still got some questions, we can get answers for you.
I'll let it go. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. To my committee, I would like you to just hang on with me for a minute. I'd like to thank all of those who were here today to testify and those that are here to give all the information that they've given and answer questions. And to my committee, I need you to get off of this Zoom and click on the new Zoom so we can continue our committee meeting.
Madam Chair,
yes.
I'd just like to also tell the Rules Committee that for us today, this is the end of our participation. We'll be waiting to see what the Senate does, and we'll be working on the Senate bills after the Senate finally decides.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman Healy.